Tip number 1 is you can trick people using a fake parachute. If you stand on a ledge with your center dot past the ledge, when you hit jump twice, your character will pull out his parachute and make the parachute sound, but you stay on the ground. And I find this can be useful in certain situations when someone is in a building below you. You can bait them to come out from wherever they're hiding by doing this, because they'll hear the parachute sound and think that you've jumped off the building. You do have to be a little careful doing this because you will be stuck in a parachute animation for a split second, so keep that in mind. And then tip number 2 is you can carry extra equipment on top of vehicles. You can no longer carry more than one field upgrade or kill streak in your inventory, but what's nice is if you have a car, you can get extra items at a buy station or pick them up after you eliminate someone and then drop them on top of your vehicle, and then you can drive to your next position or to a teammate. I find this is very useful for extra plate boxes because with the Season 3 update, we just can't carry that many plates anymore. But I also find it's very useful if you want to carry extra UAVs or if you want to have both a UAV and a precision strike. One thing to note though is that kill streaks do go invisible when you put them on the car. They're still there, but they do disappear, and you just have to get back in the vehicle to see them again. And the next tip is you can fully block a lot of entrances with vehicles if you back the vehicle up into the entrance. And then if someone wants to get through, they have to actually get into the vehicle and move it. A few buildings where this is very useful is the police station buildings, where you can drive an LTV through the front door and then block off the entrance. And you can also do a similar thing at the fire stations. But where I think this is kind of broken is you can completely block the interior zip lines of some of the buildings downtown, and then the only way to get up to the top of the building is to use the stairs, which means you don't have to have someone on your team watch the zip. You just have to keep an eye on your minimap to make sure that no one moves the vehicle. Now they aren't in the game yet, but you can use vehicles to block some of the exterior zip lines that they'll be adding to the game in the Season 3 update, so definitely keep an eye out for that too. Now the next tip is similar to the last one, but you can fully block some of the ladders on the map and some of the entrances with loadouts. For instance, if you call a loadout on the ladder at the front of prison, you can fully block access to the highest parts of this POI. You can also do this in the buildings downtown, and depending on the door, you can either fully block it or at least make it so that someone would have to crawl over the loadout to get through, which would make them a very easy kill. Oh, and by the way, if you're enjoying these tips and want to watch me play live, I stream on Twitch and YouTube, and the link is in the description. And then tip number 5 is that running with your knife out is not the fastest way to move on the map. You actually move a little bit faster if you jump and slide as you're running, because you get a slight speed boost when you slide. To do this, you simply want to run, and then you jump, and then you hit your slide button as you touch the ground, and then you press your jump button again to get back into a run. The speed boost isn't massive, but if you're trying to make a long rotation on foot, any extra speed will be useful. Okay, tip number 6 is for my controller players. If you don't know, pulling out your melee knife gives you unlimited attack sprint and can be very useful when you're chasing someone or being chased because you move faster. Now normally you have to hold down your melee button to pull out your knife, but this takes time and does feel pretty clunky, so instead you can get a foot pedal and then go into your settings, and in the keyboard section there's a binding for pulling out your melee knife instantly with one button, and you can bind this to your foot pedal. And don't worry, Call of Duty says in the settings menu that this is not considered cheating, and most of the pros and streamers that you watch are doing this because it allows you to instantly pull out your melee knife instead of having to hold down a button. And in gunfights, milliseconds can be the difference between life and death, so you want to get any advantage that you can get. Also, I do have an affiliate link in the description for the foot pedals that I use if you'd like to pick one up. Now the next tip is to use the parachute dive. When you jump normally off buildings, you don't go very far once you pull your parachute. But if you first dive off the building and then pull your parachute, you do travel quite a bit further, and you can make jumps that you wouldn't normally be able to make, and you can get around the map quite a bit faster. And the next tip is to use the canopies on the buildings downtown for partial fall damage. For instance, if I fall off this building right here, I immediately die due to fall damage. But if I simply bounce off the canopy on the side of the next building over, I barely take any damage at all. And this can be really useful for getting off buildings really quickly to chase someone or to get away from someone when you're being chased, and there's many of these canopies all around the downtown area. And then tip number 10 is to use deployable covers to reach new jump spots. I'm not sure what happened with the new Verdansk map, but it does seem like our characters are shorter or something, so a lot of the old jump spots no longer work. However, you can use a deployable cover to make a lot of jumps that you can't normally do, and you'd be surprised with how many surfaces there are on the map that will allow you to put a deployable cover down. Also, a little bit of an add-on tip to this one is be on the lookout for these air conditioning covers. The developers put these on a lot of different buildings, and you can mantle most of them for different jump spots. And the next tip is you can skip the animation of your character getting into vehicles. If you're trying to get into a vehicle and you're getting shot at, the last thing you want is to be stuck in an animation where your character's hitbox is exposed. So in these situations where someone is shooting at you, when you press the interact button to get into the vehicle, if you immediately press the seat swap button, your character will instantly teleport into the car and into cover where you can't easily be shot. And if you practice this a little bit in Plunder, you can get really fast at it, and I think this tip is great because the time to kill in this game is so fast that just avoiding a little bit of damage can really save your life in a lot of situations. And this next tip is a funny one. If you played OG Verdansk, you'd know that you can set up C4 traps inside vehicles. And over the weekend, I had a lot of fun doing this, including one time where I saw a team with a helicopter on TV station. So I simply threw a C4 into my helicopter and then swapped it with theirs. And then a few minutes later, when they went to go make their rotation, they had no idea what hit them. But one thing that's maybe not so great is I did test this out with blast traps, and these also blow up vehicles. And what I found is if you seat swap into the back seats of a vehicle and then throw the blast trap into those back seats, not many people check this or can even see it, and you can get a lot of easy kills doing this. So for this tip, it's just to be careful when you're getting into vehicles and realize that there's a lot of ways to set up traps to blow them up. Now the next tip is a simple one, but really important. One thing to know about Verdansk is that the sun is positioned at an angle in the east. So what this means is that if you're fighting someone and looking to the west, your shadow will be visible before you are when you come around corners. And this is also the case when you're on a roof. The person inside the building will likely be able to track your movements based on your shadow and vice versa. So this is definitely something you want to keep in mind when you're in gunfights. Now tip number 14 is great for late game. If you find yourself inside of a building with no available cover, instead of proning normally to try to surprise someone if they push you can dive onto your back and your character model will look more like a dead body, and this can confuse people a little bit and give you a slight edge in the gunfight. Also, if there are dead enemies in the room, if you lay on top of these enemies, your character basically clips through the dead player and you can be very hard to see, and it is kind of broken. Now this next tip has to do with buy stations. We all know that players love to camp them, but what I don't think a lot of people know is you can seat swap and smoke out your vehicle at the buy station, which allows you to pretty much stay in the smoke or in cover the entire time while you're at the buy station and makes you pretty hard to eliminate. The next tip is to jump peek the tops of zip lines. If you press your jump button near the top of the zip and time it correctly, you can peek the top to see if anyone is camping the zip. You can also reattach when you're falling back down, and I've been using this technique to smoke out the tops of the zips or to use lethal grenades if I think someone is camping them. The next one has to do with vehicles once again, and if you haven't realized by now, vehicles are extremely overpowered in this game because the time to kill is so fast, and the tip is that you can finish a lot of contracts still in your vehicle. I like to use my vehicles a lot to complete recon contracts because it gives me a lot of extra cover, and I also like to use them to complete supply runs. Next, you can mark places on the map indefinitely by using one of the 6 other pings in your ping wheel. Your default ping is your go-to ping, and what happens is if you use one of these pings more than once, the old ping disappears. But if you use one of these 6 other pings, as long as you don't use that ping again, it stays on the map. And you can have up to 3 pings on the map at any given time. And I think that this can be helpful for pinging a teammate's loot when they die, or if you want to ping a team that you want to fight later. One thing to note though is that if you do want to do this, you have to go into your settings and you want to change your ping length to indefinitely. Also, unfortunately, you cannot open your ping wheel when you have your TAC map open, so you can only ping locations that you can see with this method. And if you want to see my best tip for improving your aim in Call of Duty, you can check out this video right here. Thanks, and I'll see you guys in the next one.